One of the best parts about Azalea is her adaptability in every single matchup. She can change her playstyle and bring in cards to shore up a lot of her bad matchups and make some good matchups just super favored. First matchup to talk about is Assassin. Assassin can be a difficult matchup. Both New and Azalea are pretty difficult, and even Arachne can beat us if we're not careful. You want to make sure you're utilizing 5-card hands whenever possible, and we're going to have a pattern of playing a 5-card hand, and then maybe having an off turn, blocking a little and setting up while still sending some relevant on hit. We can also consider arsenaling less in the matchup. Having an empty arsenal is pretty bad against Codex of Frailty, but having an arsenal allows our opponent to better play double disruption turns. We also want to make sure we're playing around defense reactions, because if we can strand a defense reaction in their arsenal, they can no longer play cards like Codex of Frailty, which are just super powerful. Cards like Remorseless and Seek and Destroy put together are really strong against any matchup that's trying to fatigue us, and Assassin definitely is. And Laced with Frailty is also pretty powerful when on a dominated arrow, because it means they can't use their daggers on a 4-card hand. Brute as a matchup is a pretty simple one. We're going to mostly be playing our cards. Make sure to be wary of Fleshbag. Bolden Shot just loses a lot of value in this matchup because the first time we present Bolden Shot into Codex or Bolden Shot into Arrow, they're just going to use Fleshbag to make sure we can't use our Arrow or Codex in hand. We do output better numbers than all the brutes even KO, but they do have more armor. We have to make sure that our on-hits are lining up so that we can win in the long run. And we can consider arsenaling less frequently and playing out stronger 5-card hands and foregoing Skullbone Crosswrap usage. Both Seek and Destroy and Drill Shot are pretty important in this matchup. Drill Shot means that their armor is less good, which overall is important. And Seek and Destroy makes it so that they have to play out their Blood Rush Bellows on the turns when they draw them, which really decreases the power of that card. You can also consider playing Balance of Justice instead of Skullbone Crosswrap in this matchup, mostly because we're oftentimes trying to play out 5-card hands when we can. And we also get Command and Conquered so many times that sometimes we just end up not having an arsenal. Meanwhile, Balance of Justice is really good against Blood Rush Bellows. There's really 2 types of Guardians. There's a Fatigue Guardian and an Aggro Guardian. Victor usually plays as an aggro deck. And against Victor, you want to make sure that you're sending as much dominated damage as possible, because he gets a lot of value from being able to block with 2 cards, drawing a card off one of his blocking cards, and then sending some big on-hit. You also want to make sure that we're bottoming non-attacks off of our cross-wrap. If you're not bottoming non-attacks off of your cross-wrap, then when you get to the late game, you're just going to have a bunch of arrows down there. And even against Victor, we are getting to second cycle in this matchup because we're just forced to block a lot. We also want to make sure we're utilizing Reload so that we can dominate off the top more frequently. If you have a Reload and arrow card in hand, we can oftentimes just activate Azalea's ability Blind, hoping to hit an arrow to get some dominate damage in. The important cards in this matchup are, again, Drill Shot and Seek and Destroy. Victor is oftentimes trying to set up Pummel and Command and Conquer together, and Seek and Destroy stops that. Drill Shot is just really good against their armor. Fatigue Shot's also really important because oftentimes it can be worth up to 4 value on hit. Illusionist isn't really one class. Prism and Enigma play very differently. However, Murkmire Grapnel is really important against both those heroes. Murkmire Grapnel is pretty important at all times in the game, but knocking for Murkmire Grapnel will just end the game on the spot a lot of the time. We also want to make sure we know their tricks. Think about what happens if your opponent plays Arclight Sentinel. Think about Warmongers, and make sure you know all the Angel interaction. And against Enigma especially, but also against Prism, there's just always going to be a defense reaction in the arsenal. So we want to make sure we're playing around that. Murkmire Grapnel is just a really key card, but also Seek and Destroy and Remorseless put together can oftentimes just destroy their entire strategy. Especially Enigma is oftentimes trying to play out their Mirror Guy on the same turn that they Warmongers you, but if we Seek and Destroy them, they're just never gonna be able to have the chance to put that combo together. We want to be trying to combo Seek and Destroy and Dominated Remorseless. Mechanologist is kind of 2 classes. The first is a really aggro class, and then there's a defensive Mechanologist class. The defensive Mechanologists, Teklo and Dash IE, you really just have to play as if it's a fatigue matchup, and Remorseless and Seek and Destroy are really important there. But against Dash IO, And max, we're trying to make sure we're hitting Seek and Destroy and Red in the Ledger in order to stop their high value turns. Against Dash.io specifically, Red in the Ledger is just super strong because they can't play anything off the top, and their turns really are just bad if they're not doing 5 or 6 things a turn. Lace with Frailty is also incredibly good against Dash.io and Dash.IE. Ninja used to be one of our hardest matchups, but since the ban of Art of War, this matchup has gotten significantly easier. The big thing to make sure to watch out for is Warmongers. If we take 12 and then they play Warmongers, it's a huge punish. So make sure you have a plan for if your opponent plays Warmongers. We want to be making sure to arsenal attacks even if we don't have Snapdragon Scalers up. We also want to make sure that we're sending Red in the Ledger and getting Red in the Ledger off Codex of Frailty. We just want to make sure they can't play the game at any point. If we send a Red in the Ledger, that means their attacks that come in for 3 are just blocking for 2. Remorseless is really strong in this matchup because oftentimes Remorseless on hit deals 5. Obviously Long Draw Half Glove makes it so Warmongers is significantly less effective. Against Runeblade, there's a couple different things to worry about. Against Viscerai, we want to make sure that our hand doesn't lose to Succumb. If your opponent plays Succumb to Temptation and takes your only arrow, are you going to lose the game on the spot? That's the big thing to make sure that you're thinking about. All the Runeblades, even Vincent and Viscerai and Florian, have bad blocking cards, so if we're sending effective on-hits, then we can really just kill their turn. We also want to make sure we're disrupting their arsenal with Seek and Destroy. Viscerai is trying to set up Mordred Tide, and Aurora really isn't getting too far above curve unless she's playing out her specialization. And Vincent is really trying to put combo pieces in her arsenal in order to make sure that she can keep her powerful turns coming. So Seek and Destroy and Red and Ledger are really strong in these matchups. And Sleep Dart also is. Against Aurora, she can't use her ability. Oftentimes against Viscerai, it makes it so his turn loses 3 to 4 damage. Vincent, it can actually be kind of a toss-up. Sometimes it's amazing and sometimes it's terrible, but I do like to side Sleep Dart into those matchups. And against Florian, Sleep Dart is just okay, oftentimes being worth maybe 2 value. Warriors, very interesting. First, talk about the generic warriors. All the dual-handed warriors struggle to beat you in a value game just because oftentimes if we're hitting Dominate, they can't utilize their 4 and 5 card hands effectively. So sometimes they'll bring in a fatigue package. We want to make sure that we're reading their playstyle and counting their D-reacts to make sure we know what sort of endgame they're going for. Once we've figured out if our opponent is looking to fatigue us or looking to outdamage us, then we can consider bottoming non-attacks for the second cycle. Against Dawnblade Dory, sometimes they'll come out the gates swinging if they draw powerful hands, but then pivot to fatigue after you've blocked with power cards for a couple turns in a row. So make sure you're thinking about that when you're playing against Dawnblade. Against Bolton, we mostly just want to make sure we're hitting him with Red and Ledger and Seek and Destroy. He just can't get over the value of our hands if we're never letting him set up. Against the fatigue strategies, Remorseless and Seek and Destroy are really strong. And Laced with Frailty is basically always +2 on hit. Wizard is actually a lot of different matchups. The biggest one to worry about right now is probably Kano. Our regular plan is good enough to beat Verdances, especially if they're running cards into us like Energy Potion and Healing Potion. So I wouldn't worry too much about that matchup, but Kano can be very difficult. So you want to make sure you're disrupting Kano's arsenal, and when you can, you want to try and hold yellows in your hand to bluff Arcane Barrier, and then if they send spells at you on your turn, you might be able to use your yellow or even a red to pitch for Arcane Barrier to prevent 3 damage. And you can also try to trick them after blocks with Rain Razors and Snapdragon Scalers. I think this is actually a really important part of the matchup. Once Kano is blocked with 1 or 2 cards, you have free reign to send as many cards as you want and use your whole hand. So the important cards in this matchup are really Seek and Destroy, Rain Razors, Snapdragon Scalers. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you do it, I'll feed my cat. If you don't, he's gonna die, so make sure to do it.